Rumpelstiltskin. There was once upon a time a king who ruled a faraway kingdom. He was very greedy. For many years he was unable to find himself a bride. He wanted to marry a rich princess. The king also had a hobby. It was his usual habit to visit the kingdom whenever he felt like. Without informing anyone, he used to take his horse and move around the various quarters of the kingdom. In another part of his kingdom, there lived a miller. He was very poor. He had a daughter who was very talented and beautiful. The miller had very high hopes from his daughter and believed that she would carve out a fine life for herself. He was very proud of her. One day the king thought to himself, "I have not been visiting my kingdom for a long time. I think I should make a visit today." He immediately ordered for his royal horse to be made ready. After some time, he aligned his horse and rode for a long distance. From a distance, he saw a lonely miller's house. The miller saw the king approaching him from a distance. When the king neared him, he said, "I salute you, O king. Kindly forgive me for my shabby clothes. I do not have a good house to call you inside, but I have something which you certainly don't have." The miller introduced her daughter to the king. The miller said she is very beautiful and talented. The king asked mockingly, "Well, if she is really so talented, then she can turn hay into gold." The miller replied, "Yes, she can," without even thinking. The king immediately ordered the girl to leave for the palace and to be locked in a cellar with a pile of hay in it. On entering the cellar, the king said, "Young lady, if you do not turn this pile of hay into gold by tomorrow morning, then you will be given death penalty." The girl was terrified to say anything. Sitting on the pile of hay, she cried, "What am I supposed to do? I will die tomorrow because I can never make this hay into gold." Exhausted, she lay flat on the hay. She had given up all her hopes when she suddenly heard footsteps near the door. Becoming alert, she sat upright on the pile of hay, and just then the door banged open. She saw a dwarf with a crooked long nose, wearing a funny-looking hat on his head, dressed in a gaudy clothes with a wicked grin on his face. Her fear turned into surprise when the dwarf said, "Do not fear, O girl, I am here to help you." Pointing to the pile of hay, she said, "Can you turn this into gold?" The dwarf replied, "Yes, of course, I can, provided you give me something in return." She removed her gold chain, which was given to her by her grandparents, gave it to the dwarf and said, "You can have this chain." The dwarf accepted it happily, told the girl to sleep, merrily singing to himself. He did the weaving. After completing the weaving, he simply disappeared. In the morning, the king was thrilled to see the hay pile turned into gold. In the night, the poor girl was again ordered to a bigger cellar with piles of hay in it to be converted into gold. This time, she had no hopes and knew that death awaited her in the morning. After some time, she suddenly saw the same funny-looking dwarf standing inside the cellar. She cried out, "Please do help me, and this time I shall give you my golden ring." The dwarf happily accepted the ring, merrily sang to himself, and started weaving the hay into gold. The greedy king returned toward the girl and said, "I would give you another cellar filled with hay. You would have to return it to gold by tomorrow. If you do so, I would marry you and make you my queen." The poor girl, having no other choice, agreed to his condition. By next morning, the entire room of hay was turned into gold. The king entered the cellar and was enjoyed. He said, "You deserve to be my wife." He stuck the fine strands of gold on his treasury, and true to his word, married the girl. The king and the queen live happily. The queen was especially thrilled seeing all the splendor of royal life after living in poverty for so many years. She got so involved in her new life, and she forgot the dwarf and the promise made to him by her. A year later, a very happy queen was blessed with a handsome boy. One day, the queen was humming a lullaby to her son. Suddenly, she saw her chamber door opening and the dwarf with the same wicked grin. "Well, my dear queen, I think you have forgotten the promise you made to me. I have come to take your child." The scared queen wept and begged him. "No, please, not my baby." He did not agree, and the queen fell on her knees and pleaded. "Well, all right, I shall give you a chance. I shall not take your baby if you can guess my real name. I would come to you on 3 days, and if you do not mention my real name, I would take away your child on the 3rd day." The queen was in a fix. She ordered all the spies of the palace to move around all parts of the kingdom and collect all unique names. The dwarf appeared on the 1st day. The queen read out a list of names given to her by the spies. Needle Thin Pin, Tomato Seppi, Pink High Dresses, and the dwarf went on denying it. The dwarf screen-winded and said, "Well, I'll come back tomorrow." The next day, the messengers scurried again to different parts of the kingdom and bought a list of unique names. The queen rattled the names again, but of no use. The 3rd day again, the messengers went back to various parts of the kingdom and gave the list of names to the queen. But the queen felt that she would lose her child, and there seemed to be no name in the world which could be the name of the dwarf. Giving up entirely, she did not even notice the dwarf entering the chamber. Her friend and aide rose to her assistance and rattled the list of names, and the dwarf went on denying. Finally, they all gave up, having exhausted all the names they had, and the queen very hesitantly handed over the infant prince to the dwarf. When he was about to leave, a messenger with a very excited look on his face came rushing into the chamber, panting and breathing heavily. "My queen," he whispered, "last night I was asking people for weird names. When I saw a dwarf from a distance dancing and singing a song merrily around the bonfire, all by himself. Furious, I rushed up there and heard the man singing thus, 'Ha ha ha! I think the prince is mine now.' As the queen would never in her wildest dreams be able to guess my name, Rumpelstiltskin, ha ha ha!" The queen sprang up on her feet and screamed in delight. "Wait a minute, I know your name, Rumpelstiltskin." The dwarf went red all over, and he was stunned as to how she had guessed his name so accurately. The queen ran and picked up the child and hugged him and kissed him all over. The dwarf disappeared without saying a word. All the messengers, the queen's aide, and the queen danced around merrily and laughed happily.